All right, let's talk about what YouTube is doing to YouTubers once again. So overnight, we got word that a big YouTuber, Steven Crowder, who has been a guest on my show multiple times in the past, has been banned from the platform.
So the YouTube policy is that after 2 content strikes within 90 days, they will get penalized and put in YouTube jail, which means they cannot post anything for 2 weeks. Just last week, YouTube preemptively issued what they're calling now their annual content review official headmaster grand poobah, whatever. That's not the title. I'm just making it up. But it was something like the idea was that they are going to tell us now what they're taking down and what percentage of what they take down is legitimate. They are saying that most people who are receiving these content strikes are able to protest them, contest them, and that they win. About 60% of everyone who protests wins. The problem with these types of takedowns, specifically the one around the Steven Crowder channel, is that they're not given a reason why they're taken down. And when you contest, you're not given a reason why your decision was made one way or the other. So it feels very draconian, right? And so the question that YouTube rightly has to answer is, on what basis are you making these decisions? And are you now playing some type of filter and not allowing people access to information based on your own political bent?
Yeah, I mean, Steven Crowder is now 1 strike away from being permanently banned. And specifically, it had to do, here's the Mashable piece on it, but specifically it had to do with the video they were talking about transgender. And so when reached for comment, like Mashable, here's the thing, not everyone has the ability to reach out to Mashable as a news source and say, hey, we were taken off YouTube. Can you, reach out and find out? So Mashable contacts YouTube to find out like what the heck happened here, because Steven wasn't able to find out. Like when they send the email out, there's nothing specific in the email. Like when we were taken off of YouTube a few months ago we were talking about COVID. Yes. And we were citing data and science and fact. And guess what? We were citing the very same stuff that was in a CNN video, a CNN story, and CNN's was left up there. So they pick winners and losers. And they were able to remove our video and our live stream, but they kept the CNN video up there. I mean, talk about a double standard. I guess if we had millions of dollars and we were billionaire media corporations, then they would keep us up there.
Well, also taking CNN off their platform would help to delegitimize their platform, right? Like not having those marquee brands on YouTube would look worse for YouTube. Maybe they don't necessarily feel like they need Steven Crowder.
Well, that's the thing. That's a great point, because back in the day, I remember when I worked at Fox, there was an outreach from Google to the big media companies. I remember Google executives, YouTube executives coming into the News Corp building and meeting with Fox News Digital about you should be putting up your content on YouTube. There was like a partnership. I don't say a partnership, but there was, are they coming to my house? They're not coming to my house. They're not going to your house. They're not going to Steven Crowder's house, but they're going to the big media conglomerates and asking them to be put up on YouTube.
Yes, it's interesting, and I am scared to discuss the merits of what he said because I'm interested in what specifically he said and whether or not one should be able to see those things, but I don't want to get a strike. So that's why we're reporting this without me. I'm not going to say it.
Well, I mean, here's specifically, Grover's upset about it too.
He can say that. Grover, you can't say that on YouTube.
Man. So here's what was sent to Steven Crowder, right? Our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our hate speech policy. Remove the following content from YouTube. Specifically, it was a video about Elon Musk.
But the piece in it was about transgender. And so there was some parody inside there. And so, YouTube is trying to not make I want to say Dave Chappelle type, are we going to call it a mistake? Or where pointing out people's transgendered can be considered mockery, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he says, this is what Steven Crowder said, as usual, they did not provide any details for the suspension. It's one of those things where we could just say, we could guess. I mean, take your pick. So what is it exactly? We don't know. And this is the problem. And
yes.
Where specifically, I had a YouTube liaison, I guess, who worked with me recently. And, every day we do a video, we get demonetized here on the channel. Every day we get one of those little yellow, hey, your content is too controversial or whatever. So pick, I guess only big media companies can cover controversial issues where they don't get demonetized. But we as content creators here at independent media get slapped like this. And, I don't forget his politics, whether you like Steven Crowder or not. That's not the issue here. It's about speech, and it's about these big media companies, these big tech media companies controlling speech.
Yes.
And controlling thought, basically. When you control speech, you control thought.
I mean, we've been having an argument for decades about what the FCC should and should not allow, right? And at least there is a specific set of rules. You can't say bad words. You can't say things that are prurient in nature. You can't show those types of things, right? Especially from a news standpoint, right? We should have a bit more leeway if we're telling you what the news is and not telling you what to do. We try really hard to never tell you what to do. Except don't use plastics and right. Chemicals and maybe a few other things. But for the most part, right, you should have some kind of leeway for at least discussing what the news is. And so this is the thing that Congress and YouTube has had this sort of flirty dance about whether or not we're going to make you come up with some rules and government regulation. And it hasn't happened yet. So it's very concerning right now, given that this is the most popular platform that everybody has an equal voice. I mean, for some reason, you think about election laws, right? Election law means that any network has to give equal airtime to both sides. Like
right.
these are laws in place, right?
Yeah.
Broadcast networks have to give equal time to all candidates. They don't necessarily do that, but they're supposed to. And so at least we know the rules of engagement. For big tech, new media, we don't. And it's concerning to see them fly by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, YouTube says, we have a second strike to Steven Crowder and channel for violating our hate speech policy. This is what they've responded to Mashable. Only, again, we wouldn't know this, but because Mashable reached out to them, we have some clarity a little bit about violating our hate speech policy through repeated targeting of the LGBTQ plus community. Hate speech is not allowed on YouTube, and we remove our content or issue other penalties, such as a strike when a creator repeatedly targets, insults, and abuses a protected group based on certain attributes.
Okay, well, Jack the Bomb is saying here that Steven Crowder is quite a offensive person to transgendered people, and I did not view the content. So
well, you can't because it's gone. I mean, it's been removed.
Right, I didn't view it before then. So.
Okay, but here's my point is, again, big tech controls the narrative. And so this is why I've been pushing for a decentralized web. I mean, this is why, I think Web3 around crypto is incredibly promising. It'll take the power of the internet outside of the hands of people like Google. It'll take it outside of the hands of people like companies like Facebook and Amazon that control everything and put it in the hands of the people. If you don't like what he has to say, then don't watch it. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's the same way, like if you don't like Howard Stern, you don't have to buy a Sirius XM subscription.
Right. You can say that about hate speech on one hand, right? But hate speech leads to violence. And that's why you can't just let the media follow the same rules of capitalism, meaning like anything goes and people will weed out what's not right, because then you'd have things like, child violence or, other inappropriate content around minors or drug-related things, violent things. Like there has to be some standard, but the standards should be clear. Specifically around transgender, it's not just about whether or not it's funny, right? It's about whether or not it promotes real discrimination and hate. And this is and it's real, right? Your words matter. So if it's like this guy was playing a jingle about how funny it is, right? To have it like it seems like it was a crying game type, situation, it's not really funny. And if you've seen that movie, you know what happens, right? It's a sad ending. And this is specifically what we're trying to not have happen in our community. And that's fine if you're going to flag somebody's content, but there needs to then be real rules around it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then you have discussion. Well, anyway, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole any further, but I mean, to bring up this, that, speech right now is controlled in the hands of a few tech oligarchs. And we can have broader discussions about what is appropriate on broadcast. Should they be regulated at the FCC level? Should it be?
Yes, and YouTube should have the onus of saying these things specifically, right? It's not just a blanket email like you got to strike, but you got to strike for these words.
Right.
Right.
These specific words we don't allow on our platform. Whatever. But yeah, again, it's all vague. And so there are people saying, what about other platforms? Yeah, like we are on Rumble. There's a couple of other platforms. Again, they don't have the reach that a YouTube does, but Rumble, we are on Rumble. We're on Twitch. We're on other platforms. But again, wouldn't it be great to not have to rely on these these media-owned companies with a decentralized web where we wouldn't have to worry about this? I think this is the future of the internet, and I'm all for it.